They thought $12,000 would buy them peace in their final years. But what Marlowe and Werner really purchased was an island estate hiding $680 million beneath its floors, and the dangerous men who would kill to take it back. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The afternoon sun filtered through the thin curtains of the mobile home, casting pale yellow lines across the worn linoleum floor. Marlowe Henderson, 73 years old, with hands that still trembled slightly from his stroke 2 years prior, sat at the cramped kitchen table squinting at his laptop screen. The air conditioner rattled in the window, barely making a dent in the Florida heat. Beside him, his wife, Werner, 71, chopped carrots for soup, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. They had been married for 49 years, and in all that time they had never stopped dreaming of something better. But better had always felt just out of reach. Marlowe had worked for the Postal Service for 37 years. Werner had been a school librarian. They had raised 3 children, paid off a modest house, and planned for a retirement filled with coastal sunsets and quiet mornings. Then the medical bills came. Marlowe's stroke, Werner's hip replacement, their eldest son's gambling debts that they had quietly helped cover because that is what parents do. The house had to be sold. Now they lived in a 14 by 70-foot box on the outskirts of Tampa, surviving on Social Security and the fading hope that life still had one more surprise left for them. Marlowe scrolled through a real estate website he had bookmarked months ago, a guilty pleasure he indulged in when Werner was busy. Oceanfront properties he would never afford. Island cottages with price tags that made him laugh bitterly. But that afternoon, something caught his eye. A listing with no photos, just a single line of text. Isolated island estate, Carolina coast, $12,000 or best offer, serious inquiries only. He blinked. 12,000? That had to be a typo. He clicked on it. The description was sparse, almost reluctant. Private island accessible by ferry, main residence approximately 8,000 square feet, built 1976, unoccupied since 2008, sold as is, buyer responsible for all inspections and repairs. No warranties, no refunds. Marlowe leaned back in his chair, the plastic creaking under his weight. "Werner?" he called softly. She turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What is it? Come look at this." Werner walked over, peering at the screen over his shoulder. Her eyes narrowed. $12,000 for an island? She said slowly. "Marlowe, that is either a scam or a nightmare, or an opportunity," he countered. Werner pulled out the chair beside him and sat down heavily. Her hip still ached on humid days, and today was one of them. "Sweetheart, we barely have $15,000 in savings. If we spend almost all of it on some broken-down house in the middle of nowhere, what happens if one of us gets sick again?" Marlowe turned to her, and in his eyes she saw something she had not seen in years: hope. "What happens if we do not take a chance?" he asked quietly. "What happens if we spend the rest of our lives in this tin can, waiting for the next bill to arrive, the next thing to break? We have been careful our whole lives, Werner. Maybe it is time to be a little reckless." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Call the number." The real estate agent's name was Porter, and he sounded like a man who had given up on optimism decades ago. His voice crackled through Marlowe's phone, flat and tired. "You are calling about the island property?" "Yes," Marlowe said, trying to sound confident. "My wife and I are interested." Porter let out a long breath. "Look, I will be straight with you. That place has been on the market for 6 years. Nobody wants it." "Why not?" Marlowe asked. "Because it is cursed, haunted, or both, depending on who you ask. Locals will not go near it. The last owner died under strange circumstances, and before that there were incidents." "Incidents?" Werner leaned closer to the phone, her brow furrowed. Porter hesitated. "Drownings, disappearances, storms that seemed to target the island specifically." I am not saying I believe in any of that nonsense, but facts are facts. Nobody stays there long. Marlowe and Werner exchanged a glance. How do we see it? Marlowe asked. Porter paused. You are serious? Dead serious. Another sigh. Fine, I will arrange a ferry, but I am telling you right now, you are wasting your time. 3 days later, Marlowe and Werner stood on a weathered dock in a tiny coastal town called Bridges Point. The morning air smelled like salt and gasoline. A handful of fishing boats bobbed in the harbour, their paint chipped and faded. The ferry was little more than a flat-bottomed barge with a motor, piloted by a grizzled man in his 60s who introduced himself as Captain Doyle. He looked at them like they were walking into a fire. You are the ones going out to Thorn Island? He asked. That is right, Marlowe said, gripping the strap of his duffel bag. Doyle shook his head. Your funeral? The ride took 20 minutes. The water was choppy, grey-green and restless. Werner sat on a wooden bench, clutching her purse, her face pale. Marlowe stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, the other gripping the railing. As the island came into view, Werner gasped softly. It rose from the water like something out of a forgotten storybook. Dense with trees, palms and oaks tangled together, and at the centre, perched on a rocky hill, stood the mansion. Even from a distance, it was massive. White stone walls stained with years of neglect, broken shutters, shattered windows. But beneath the decay, there was grandeur. Wide verandas, tall columns, arched doorways. It must have been stunning once. Captain Doyle cut the engine and let the barge drift toward a crumbling stone pier. This is as close as I get, he said. You want me to wait? Marlowe shook his head. We will call when we are ready to leave. Doyle snorted. Good luck getting a signal out here. He handed them a walkie-talkie. Channel 6. I will check in every few hours. If you do not answer, I am not coming back. They stepped off the barge onto the pier, and Doyle pushed away without another word, the engine growling as he disappeared back toward the mainland. Marlowe and Werner stood alone, the wind tugging at their clothes. The island was silent except for the sound of waves and the distant cry of gulls. You still think this is a good idea? Werner asked softly. Marlowe squeezed her hand. Let us find out. The path from the pier to the mansion was overgrown, choked with weeds and wild vines. Marlowe used a stick to push branches aside as they climbed the hill. Werner moved slowly, her hip protesting every uneven step, but she did not complain. When they finally reached the front entrance, they stopped. The double doors were enormous, carved wood with brass handles tarnished green. Marlowe pulled the key from his pocket, the one Porter had mailed to them with a note that said, "You have been warned." He slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly, too smoothly. The door swung open with a low groan, and stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of dust, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Werner wrinkled her nose. Smells like a crypt. Marlowe stepped inside first. The foyer was cavernous. A grand staircase curved upward to the second floor. Faded portraits hung crooked on the walls. A chandelier, half its crystals missing, dangled from the ceiling like a broken skeleton. But what struck Marlowe most was how intact everything was. Yes, there was dust. Yes, there was decay. But the furniture was still in place. The rugs, though threadbare, were still laid out. The curtains, sun-bleached and torn, still hung in the windows. It was as if someone had walked out one day and simply never returned. Werner moved cautiously into the parlour. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed. She pressed one gently. It made no sound. "Marlowe," she called. "Yeah, this place is too clean." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She gestured around. "Look, no animal nests, no broken furniture, no graffiti. If this place has been abandoned for almost 20 years, where is all the damage?" Marlowe had not thought about that. She was right. The house felt preserved, almost intentionally so. They moved through the rooms slowly. a dining hall with a table long enough to seat 20, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves still filled with books, a kitchen with copper pots hanging from hooks, tarnished but untouched. Upstairs, they found bedrooms, 6 of them, each one frozen in time. In the master suite, Verna opened a wardrobe and found clothes still hanging inside. Men's suits, expensive ones. She ran her fingers along the fabric. Marlowe, whoever lived here, left everything behind. He walked to the window and looked out over the island. The trees swayed in the wind. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond. "It is beautiful," he murmured. "It is strange," Verna corrected. That night, they set up camp in one of the smaller bedrooms. They had brought sleeping bags, flashlights, and enough food for a few days. The power was out, of course, and the water did not run. But they had expected that. What they had not expected was the silence. It was absolute, oppressive. Even the wind seemed muted inside the thick stone walls. Verna lay in her sleeping bag, staring at the ceiling. "Marlowe, do you think we made a mistake?" He reached over and took her hand. "I do not know yet," he said honestly, "but we are here now. Let us see what we are really dealing with." The next morning, Marlowe began a full inspection of the property. He had been handy his whole life, fixing things around their old house, helping neighbors with plumbing and wiring. He knew enough to spot major problems. And there were problems. The roof had leaks. The plumbing was corroded. The electrical panel was outdated and dangerous. But structurally, the house was solid. The foundation was sound. The walls were thick, built to withstand hurricanes. With work, this place could be livable again. Verna spent the morning exploring the grounds. The gardens had gone wild, but she could see the bones of something beautiful beneath the chaos. Flower beds, stone pathways, a fountain long dry. She found a greenhouse with shattered glass and rusted frames, and inside the remains of orchids and ferns long dead. It made her sad. Someone had loved this place once. Someone had cared. By noon, they met back at the house. Marlowe had made a list. Verna had sketched a rough map of the property. They sat on the front steps, sharing a thermos of coffee, and for the first time in months, Verna smiled. "You know what?" she said. "I think we could do this." Marlowe grinned. "Yeah? Yeah," she said. "It is crazy, but so are we." They spent the afternoon cleaning. Dust, cobwebs, broken glass. They opened windows to air out the rooms. The sunlight poured in, and the house seemed to exhale, as if grateful to be noticed again. But as the sun began to set, Verna noticed something odd. "Marlowe," she called from the east wing, "come here." He found her standing in a narrow hallway he had not explored yet. At the end of it was a door. "What about it?" he asked. She pointed. "Look at the hinges." Marlowe stepped closer. The hinges were new, not rusty, not old, freshly oiled. He frowned. "That does not make sense." Verna tried the handle. Locked. They searched the house for a key, but found nothing. Finally, Marlowe grabbed a crowbar from his toolbox. "You sure?" Verna asked. "We own this place," he said. "If there is something behind that door, we have a right to know." He wedged the crowbar into the frame and pulled. The wood splintered. The lock gave way. The door swung open. Behind it, stone steps descended into darkness. Cold air rolled up from below, carrying that same metallic smell they had noticed when they first arrived. Marlowe clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing a staircase that seemed to go down much farther than a normal basement should. "Verna," he said slowly, "I think we just found something. What happens next will turn this forgotten island upside down, reveal a treasure nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest places hide the loudest secrets. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you are enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more." They stood at the top of the stairs for a long moment, neither of them speaking. The beam of Marlowe's flashlight trembled slightly in his hand, not from fear, but from the weight of the unknown pressing up from below. Verna pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders. "You feel that?" she whispered. "The cold?" Marlowe nodded. "Yeah, but it is more than that. It is like the air is different down there, heavier." She took a breath. "Do we go down?" He looked at her, his weathered face serious. "We came here to take a chance," he said. "Might as well see it through." Verna reached for his free hand. "Together then. Together." They descended carefully, one step at a time. The stone was smooth, almost polished, and the walls on either side were solid rock. This was not a basement someone had dug out with a shovel. This was engineered. Professional. After what felt like 30 steps, the staircase opened into a corridor. Marlowe swept the flashlight left, then right. The passage stretched in both directions, longer than should have been possible for a house this size. The walls were lined with steel panels, and overhead, dormant fluorescent fixtures hung in neat rows. Verna's voice was barely audible. "Marlowe, this is not a basement." "No," he agreed, "it is not." They chose to go right. The corridor ended at another door, this one modern, reinforced steel with a keypad lock. But the door was ajar, just an inch, enough to see that someone had been here recently. Marlowe pushed it open. The hinges moved silently. Beyond the door was a room the size of a small warehouse, and it was full. Pallets, dozens of them, stacked neatly in rows, shrink-wrapped, labeled. Marlowe stepped inside, his flashlight sweeping across the space. Verna followed, her breath shallow, her heart pounding. "What is all this?" she whispered. Marlowe approached the nearest pallet. He pulled back a corner of the plastic wrap. Underneath, stacked in perfect rows, were bricks. Gold bricks. Verna gasped. "Oh my God." Marlowe moved to the next pallet. More gold, then another. Artwork, framed paintings wrapped in protective cloth. Another pallet held wooden crates stamped with official-looking seals. He pried one open. Inside, stacked bundles of $100 bills. Verna stumbled backward, her hand over her mouth. "This is not real. This cannot be real." Marlowe kept moving, his mind racing, his hands shaking. Diamonds in small velvet boxes, bonds in fireproof cases, rare coins in sealed containers, everything labeled, catalogued, organized. At the far end of the room, he found a desk. On it, a thick leather-bound ledger. He opened it. The first page was written in neat, precise handwriting. Property inventory. Cornelius Thorne. Initiated 2006. He flipped through the pages. Each item was listed with meticulous detail. Gold bars, quantity, weight, purity. Artwork, artist, title, estimated value. Currency, denomination, serial number ranges, totals. Verna stood beside him now, reading over his shoulder. At the very last page, a single line was written in larger letters. Total estimated value as of December 2007, $680 million. Verna's knees buckled. Marlowe caught her, lowering her gently to sit on the concrete floor. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. $680 million, she whispered. Who was this man? Marlowe looked around the vault, the enormity of it finally sinking in. Cornelius Thorne. The name felt familiar, but he could not place it. Whoever he was, he had hidden a fortune here. And somehow, for $12,000, Marlowe and Verna now owned it. They sat there in the cold, sterile silence, surrounded by unimaginable wealth, and for the first time in their lives they had no idea what to do. They stayed in the vault for hours, moving from pallet to pallet like archaeologists uncovering a tomb. Verna found a section filled with rare manuscripts and first-edition books, each worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Marlowe discovered a climate-controlled room behind another locked door, this one filled with vintage wines and spirits, bottles dating back to the 1800s. But the deeper they went, the more uneasy they became. This was not just wealth. This was a fortress, a hiding place. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury this fortune. And the question that haunted them both was simple: why? Eventually, exhaustion pulled them back upstairs. They sat in the parlor, flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. Neither of them could sleep. Marlowe broke the silence. "We need to find out who Cornelius Thorne was." Werner nodded. "And we need to decide what we are going to do with all of this." Marlowe rubbed his face with both hands. "Do we report it? To who? The police? The IRS?" Werner laughed, but it was hollow. "If we report it, they will take it. They will say it is evidence, or it belongs to the government, or it is tied to some crime. We will never see a penny." "And if we do not report it?" Marlowe asked. "Then we are sitting on $680 million that does not legally belong to us, and if anyone finds out, we could go to prison, or worse." Marlowe met her eyes. "Worse?" Werner gestured around the room. "Whoever hid this, they did it for a reason. Maybe they are dead. Maybe they are not. But if they are not, or if someone else knows about it, we are not safe here." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Marlowe stood. "We are not making any decisions tonight," he said. "We are exhausted, we are overwhelmed, and we need to think clearly. Let us get some sleep, and tomorrow we start figuring this out." Werner nodded slowly. "Okay. But Marlowe," he turned, "we cannot tell anyone, not yet. Not our kids, not Porter, nobody." He agreed. Nobody. The next morning, they called Captain Doyle on the walkie-talkie and asked him to bring supplies. He arrived an hour later with groceries, bottled water, and a portable generator they had requested. "You two actually staying out here?" he asked, unloading boxes onto the pier. "For now," Marlowe said. "We are assessing what needs to be done." Doyle grunted. "Your funeral." After he left, they fired up the generator and got one section of the house running with power. Werner made coffee on a hot plate while Marlowe used his laptop to search for information on Cornelius Thorne. It did not take long to find him. Cornelius Thorne had been a financier, a hedge fund manager who had made billions in the 1990s and early 2000s. But in 2006, he had disappeared from public life. The official story was that he had retired to focus on philanthropy, but rumors swirled. Some said he had been forced out after shady deals. Others claimed he had stolen money from powerful people and gone into hiding. In 2008, his body had been found on this island. The cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but no autopsy had been performed. The estate had been tied up in legal battles for years, with multiple parties claiming ownership. Eventually, it had been sold at auction for pennies on the dollar. And now, Marlowe and Werner owned it. Werner set a cup of coffee in front of him. So he was a thief. Marlowe shook his head. Maybe. Or maybe he was protecting it from people who wanted to steal it from him. We do not know the whole story. Werner sat down, her face pale. Either way, someone out there knows this money exists, and if they find out we have it, they will come for us. Marlowe closed the laptop. Then we do not give them a reason to come looking. But 3 days later, someone came anyway. Marlowe and Werner were in the kitchen trying to get the old stove working when they heard the sound of an engine. A boat. They rushed to the window. A sleek black speedboat was pulling up to the pier. A man stepped off. Tall, mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit despite the humid coastal air. He walked toward the house with the confidence of someone who owned the place. Marlowe met him at the front door. "Can I help you?" The man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Mr. Henderson, I presume?" Marlowe's blood ran cold. "How do you know my name?" The man extended a hand. "My name is Grayson Voss. I represent a group of investors with a vested interest in this property." Marlowe did not shake his hand. "We own this property. Legally." Voss's smile widened. "Oh, I am aware. Congratulations. But ownership and possession are two very different things." Werner appeared behind Marlowe. "What do you want?" Voss looked at her, then back at Marlowe. I want to make this simple. You bought this estate for $12,000. I am authorized to offer you $5 million to walk away. Cash. No questions asked. Marlowe's jaw tightened. And if we say no? Voss's expression darkened. Then things become complicated. I would hate for two retirees to find themselves in a situation they cannot handle. It is a dangerous world, Mr. Henderson. Accidents happen. Verna stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Get off our property. Voss chuckled. Think about it. You have 48 hours. He turned and walked back to his boat without another word. The engine roared to life, and he disappeared across the water. Marlowe and Verna stood in the doorway, watching until he was out of sight. Verna's hands were shaking. They know. Marlowe nodded grimly. Yeah, they know. That night, the power went out. Not just the generator. The walkie-talkie went dead. Their cell phones, which had barely had signal to begin with, now showed nothing. They were alone. And in the darkness, they heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the house. Marlowe grabbed a tire iron from his toolbox. Verna held a flashlight like a weapon. They stood back to back in the center of the foyer, listening as the footsteps grew closer. And then, just as suddenly as they had started, they stopped. Silence. Marlowe whispered, "They are trying to scare us." Verna whispered back, "It is working." But despite the fear, despite the danger, neither of them suggested leaving. Because somewhere deep inside, they both knew the same truth. They had spent their whole lives being invisible, being overlooked, being told they did not matter. And now, for the first time, they had something worth fighting for. Not just the money, but the chance to decide their own fate. Marlowe tightened his grip on the tire iron. "Let them come," he said quietly. "We are not going anywhere." The footsteps outside the house did not return that night, but sleep never came. Marlowe and Verna sat in the parlor with their backs against the wall, flashlights at their sides, listening to every creak and groan of the old mansion. The silence felt heavier than any sound. By the time dawn broke through the windows, painting the dusty floor in pale gold, they were exhausted but resolved. Verna spoke first, her voice hoarse. "We need help." Marlowe nodded slowly. "But who do we trust? That is the question, is not it?" She pulled her knees up to her chest, looking smaller than he had seen her in years. "Whoever that man was, he knew our names. He knew we bought this place, which means he has been watching, probably from the moment we signed the papers." Marlowe stood, his joints protesting. "Then we need to move faster than they expect. We need to understand what we are really sitting on, and we need to figure out who Cornelius Thorne was hiding this from." They returned to the vault. In the daylight filtering down through the open door above, the space looked even more surreal. Row after row of wealth, gleaming and silent. But this time, they were not looking at the gold or the paintings. They were looking for answers. Verna found them in a back room they had missed the first time. Behind a false panel, hidden so well they almost walked past it, was a small office. A desk, a filing cabinet, and stacks of documents sealed in waterproof containers. Marlowe pulled the first container open. Inside were folders, each labeled with names, dates, and code words. He opened one at random. What he found made his stomach turn. Wire transfer records. Millions of dollars moved between shell companies, offshore accounts, and political action committees. Names he recognized. Senators, judges, corporate executives. And then he found the blackmail files. Photographs, bank statements, recorded conversations, evidence of bribery, fraud, embezzlement, worse. Cornelius Thorne had not just hidden money. He had hidden proof of crimes committed by some of the most powerful people in the country. Verna sat down heavily in the desk chair. "Oh, God." Marlowe kept reading. "He is not a thief," Marlowe said slowly. "He is a whistleblower. Thorne collected evidence against corrupt people, and when they came after him, he hid everything here. That is why he disappeared. That is why he died. Verna looked up at him, her eyes wide, and that is why they want it back. Marlowe nodded. If this gets out, it does not just expose criminals. It topples empires. They spent the next 2 hours photographing everything. Documents, hard drives, ledgers, files. Marlowe used his phone, even without service, to take hundreds of pictures. Verna organized them into folders on his laptop. By noon, they had a digital archive of the entire vault. And then Marlowe found the journal. It was tucked into the bottom drawer of the desk, leather-bound and thick. The first entry was dated March 15, 2006. He read aloud, "If you are reading this, then I am either dead or I have finally escaped. My name is Cornelius Thorne, and I have spent the last 20 years facilitating corruption. I moved money for people who destroy lives. I hid fortunes for those who steal from the poor. I enabled monsters because I was paid well to do so. But I kept records, every transaction, every lie, every crime, and when they realized what I had, they tried to silence me. So I ran. I bought this island under a false name. I moved everything here. The money, the evidence, all of it. If this ever surfaces, it will burn them all to the ground, and they know it. That is why they will never stop looking." Marlowe closed the journal, his hands shaking. Verna stared at him. He knew he was going to die. Marlowe nodded, and he knew whoever found this would be in danger too. That is why he buried it so deep. Verna stood up, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "Then we finish what he started." Marlowe looked at her. "You are sure?" She nodded. "We have been invisible our whole lives, Marlowe. People like us, we do not matter to the powerful, but maybe this time we can make them see us, and maybe we can do some good before we go." Marlowe pulled her into a tight embrace. "Then we need someone who can tell this story." They needed a journalist, someone with reach, someone who could not be bought or intimidated. Marlowe remembered reading about a reporter a few years back, someone who had exposed a massive pharmaceutical fraud and refused to back down even when threatened. Her name was Whitley Dane. It took 3 tries and a hike to the highest point on the island to get enough cell signal to make the call. When she answered, her voice was sharp and skeptical. "This is Whitley." Marlowe took a breath. "My name is Marlowe Henderson. My wife and I found something that involves corruption at the highest levels. I think people are going to try to kill us for it." There was a pause. "I get a lot of calls like this, Mr. Henderson. What makes yours different?" "Because we have proof," Marlowe said. "Documents, recordings, bank records, evidence that ties dozens of powerful people to fraud, bribery, and worse. And because the man who collected it died trying to keep it safe." Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you?" "On an island off the Carolina coast. We bought an old estate and we found a vault underneath it. A vault that belonged to Cornelius Thorne." The silence on the other end was so complete that Marlowe thought the call had dropped. Then Whitley spoke, her voice low and urgent. "Cornelius Thorne has been dead for almost 20 years. I tried to investigate him back in 2009, but every lead went cold. If you really have what he was hiding, you are sitting on the biggest story of the decade." Marlowe exhaled. "Then you will help us." Whitley did not hesitate. "I will be there tomorrow. Send me the coordinates. But Mr. Henderson, if what you are saying is true, you need to be very careful. The kind of people Thorne was collecting evidence on, they do not negotiate." "Understood," Marlowe said. "We will be ready." Whitley Dane arrived the next afternoon on a chartered boat. She was younger than Marlowe expected, maybe 40, with short dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She carried a waterproof bag over her shoulder and moved with the efficiency of someone used to working in dangerous places. She shook their hands firmly. "Show me." They took her down to the vault. Whitley said nothing as they descended the stairs, but her expression shifted the moment she saw the rows of pallets. When Marlowe handed her the ledger, she flipped through it in silence, her face growing paler with each page. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "Do you understand what you have here?" Verna nodded. "A death sentence if we are not careful." Whitley looked up. "You are not wrong, but you also have the truth, and that is more powerful than you think." They spent hours going through the documents. Whitley asked questions, cross-referenced names, and took notes in a small encrypted tablet. She photographed key pages and recorded video statements from Marlowe and Verna explaining how they found everything. By evening, she sat back against the wall exhausted. "This is real," she said. "All of it. Senators, judges, CEOs. Some of these people are still in power. If this goes public, it will cause a political earthquake." Marlowe sat beside her. "So what do we do?" Whitley met his eyes. "We go public, but carefully. I need to verify everything, cross-check sources, build an airtight case. That will take time. In the meantime, you two need to stay hidden. If Voss or whoever he works for realizes you have made copies, they will come for you hard." Verna spoke up. "How long do we have?" Whitley frowned. "Days, maybe a week. Not more." "Then we move fast," Marlowe said. Whitley nodded. "I will start tonight. I have contacts who can help verify some of these documents, but I need you two to promise me something." "What?" Verna asked. "Stay alive," Whitley said, "because if you die, this story dies with you. What happens next will turn this quiet island into a battlefield, reveal a conspiracy decades in the making, and remind us why sometimes the smallest voices carry the most dangerous truths. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you are enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more." That night, after Whitley left with encrypted copies of the most damaging files, Marlowe and Verna tried to sleep but could not. The house felt different now, like it was holding its breath. Around midnight, they heard it again. The sound of engines, multiple boats this time. Marlowe moved to the window and peered through the curtains. 4 boats were approaching the island, their running lights off, moving slowly through the dark water. Verna joined him. "Who are they?" Marlowe's jaw tightened. "Whoever they are not here to talk." They moved quickly. Marlowe grabbed the tire iron and a heavy flashlight. Verna took the fireplace poker. They went to the vault and locked the reinforced steel door from the inside. Then they waited in the darkness, listening. Footsteps echoed above them. Heavy boots, multiple people, voices, muffled but urgent. "Spread out, check every room. If they are here, find them." Marlowe and Verna sat pressed against the cold wall of the vault, barely breathing. The footsteps moved through the house, methodical and thorough. Doors opened and slammed shut. Furniture scraped across floors. "They are searching for us," Verna whispered. Marlowe nodded. "And for the vault." After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps grew closer. Someone was in the hallway above. The door at the top of the stairs rattled. "Locked!" a voice called out. "Use the torch!" There was a hissing sound, bright light flickering through the crack under the vault door. They were cutting through. Marlowe stood, gripping the tire iron. Verna pulled out her phone. No signal down here, but she opened the camera app and started recording. "If we do not make it," she whispered, "at least someone will know what happened." The cutting continued for 10 minutes. Then the vault door shuddered. Someone was prying it open. Marlowe positioned himself in the shadows. The door swung open. 4 men entered, all wearing black tactical gear, flashlights mounted on their weapons. Verna hit record and held the phone low, hidden behind a pallet. The lead man scanned the vault with his light, and his voice came through a radio. "Target location confirmed. Vault is intact. Beginning inventory." Another voice crackled through the radio. "Any sign of the owners?" "Negative. They might have fled. Keep searching." The men began moving through the vault, checking pallets, opening crates. One of them approached the desk where Marlowe and Verna had been working earlier. He saw the open journal. He picked it up, flipping through pages, and then he spoke into his radio. "We have a problem. Documents have been moved. Someone has been through these files recently. The radio crackled. Secure everything. If they have made copies, we need to know. Marlowe knew they had to move. If these men found them hiding, there would be no talking their way out. He glanced at Verna. She nodded, understanding. Marlowe stepped out from behind the pallet, tire iron raised. Looking for something? The men spun around, lights blinding him. One raised his weapon. Marlowe Henderson, the lead man said, lowering his gun slightly. We are not here to hurt you. We just need the documents you took. Marlowe did not lower the tire iron. Who sent you? The man hesitated. People who want to avoid unnecessary conflict. Give us the files, walk away with the $5 million Mr. Voss offered, and everyone goes home safe. Verna stepped out beside Marlowe, phone still recording in her hand. And if we refuse? The man's expression hardened. Then we take them anyway. Marlowe tightened his grip on the tire iron. You will have to go through us first. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the lead man sighed and raised his weapon. I'm sorry it has to be this way. A voice echoed from the top of the stairs. Federal agents, drop your weapons now. The vault erupted into chaos. The men in black spun around as flashlight beams cut through the darkness from above. Voices shouted commands. Freeze, hands where we can see them. Get on the ground. The tactical team hesitated, caught between the elderly couple and the agents descending the stairs. One made the mistake of raising his weapon. A single shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space. The man went down, clutching his shoulder. The others dropped their guns immediately. Within seconds, federal agents in marked vests swarmed the vault. Marlowe and Verna were pulled aside, checked for injuries, and led up the stairs. Outside, the island was lit up like midday. Floodlights, helicopters circling overhead, Coast Guard boats surrounding the shore. A woman in a dark suit approached them. Agent Helena Cross, FBI. Are you two all right? Verna was shaking. How did you know to come? Agent Cross glanced back at the house. We received an anonymous tip 3 hours ago. Detailed information about illegal activity on this property. Someone wanted us here tonight. Marlowe looked at Verna. Whitley, she must have tipped them off. Agent Cross pulled out a tablet. We need to ask you both a lot of questions. But first, I need to know, is there anything on this property that ties to Cornelius Thorne? Marlowe nodded slowly. Everything. There is a vault below the house. It is full of evidence, financial crimes, blackmail, corruption. Thorne collected it all before he died. Cross's expression shifted. Show me. They spent the next 6 hours in the vault with federal agents, going through every document, every file, every piece of evidence. Forensic accountants were called in. Digital specialists copied hard drives. Photographers documented everything. Agent Cross stood beside Marlowe as the sun began to rise outside. Mr. Henderson, she said quietly, do you understand what you have found here? Marlowe nodded. I am starting to. This is not just evidence, Cross continued. This is a roadmap to decades of corruption. Senators, federal judges, corporate executives. Some of these people are still in positions of power. If this goes public, it will trigger investigations that could last years. Verna sat on the desk, exhausted. What happens to us? Cross looked at her. You are witnesses in what will likely be one of the largest federal cases in history. We will need your testimony, your cooperation, and we will need to keep you safe. Safe from who? Marlowe asked. From anyone who wants this buried, Cross said. And trust me, there are a lot of people who do. By mid-morning, the island was swarming with federal personnel. The 4 men who had broken into the vault were arrested and taken away in Coast Guard boats. Agent Cross set up a command center in the mansion's dining room. Marlowe and Verna sat together on the front steps, watching the controlled chaos unfold around them. Verna leaned her head on Marlowe's shoulder. We really did it, did not we? Marlowe kissed the top of her head. Yeah, we did. But it is not over, she said softly. No, he agreed, it is just beginning. Whitley Dane returned to the island that afternoon, escorted by federal agents. When she saw Marlowe and Werner, she smiled. "You two are tougher than you look." Werner managed a tired laugh. "We did not have much choice." Whitley sat down beside them. "I need to tell you something. After I left last night, I started verifying the documents you gave me. I reached out to a contact at the Justice Department, someone I trust. They confirmed that Cornelius Thorne had been a federal informant before he disappeared. He was working with investigators to build cases against the people he had been laundering money for. But someone leaked his identity, and he had to run." Marlowe frowned. "So the government knew about him?" Whitley nodded. "They knew, but they lost him when he went into hiding, and when he died, they assumed the evidence died with him. Until now." Werner looked at her. "So what happens to the story?" Whitley pulled out her tablet. "I am writing it as we speak. It will run tomorrow morning. The headline is already set. Elderly couple uncovers $680 million treasure and explosive corruption scandal." Marlowe shook his head. "We do not want to be famous. We just wanted to do the right thing." Whitley's expression softened. "I know. But sometimes doing the right thing means stepping into the light. And the world needs to see that ordinary people can still fight back against power." That evening, Agent Cross gathered everyone in the dining room. Marlowe, Werner, Whitley, and a team of federal prosecutors. "We have enough evidence to file charges against 47 individuals," Cross began. "Senators, corporate officers, judges. This is going to be one of the most significant corruption cases in United States history." One of the prosecutors, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, spoke up. "But we have a problem. Half of these people have the resources to fight us for years. They will hire the best lawyers, tie us up in court, and try to discredit the evidence." Whitley leaned forward. "Then we do not give them the chance. We go public first, full exposure. Once the evidence is out there, they cannot hide from it." Cross hesitated. "That is risky. If we release too much too soon, we could compromise the investigations." Marlowe spoke up, his voice steady. "With all due respect, Agent Cross, these people have been getting away with this for decades. They have had time to cover their tracks, intimidate witnesses, and buy their way out of trouble. If we wait, they will find a way to bury this again." The room fell silent. Cross looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. We move fast. Charges will be filed within 72 hours. Miss Dane, your story runs tomorrow. And Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, you will be placed in protective custody until we can guarantee your safety." Werner reached for Marlowe's hand. "Where will they take us?" Cross smiled faintly. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, at least for now." The next morning, Whitley's story broke across every major news outlet. The headlines screamed from phones and televisions around the world. "Retired couple discovers massive corruption vault on abandoned island. $680 million fortune exposes decades of crime. Thorne's revenge, the whistleblower who saved his evidence for the right people." Marlowe and Werner watched from a safe house 3 states away. Federal agents had moved them in the middle of the night. The safe house was small but comfortable, a suburban home that blended into the neighborhood perfectly. They sat on the couch, Werner with a cup of tea, Marlowe with his arm around her, and watched their story unfold on the screen. Photographs of the island, the mansion, the vault. Interviews with Agent Cross, expert analysis of the documents, calls for investigations, resignations, arrests, and then photographs of them. Candid shots taken during the chaos, Marlowe helping Werner up the stairs from the vault, both of them looking exhausted but unbroken. The anchor's voice filled the room. Marlowe and Werner Henderson, a retired postal worker and librarian, have become unlikely heroes in what may be the biggest corruption scandal of the century. Their courage in the face of danger has sparked a national conversation about accountability and justice. Werner muted the television. "Heroes," she said softly. "We are not heroes. We were just trying to survive." Marlowe squeezed her shoulder. Maybe that is what heroes are, just ordinary people who refuse to give up. The phone rang. It was Agent Cross. She did not waste time with pleasantries. "We have made 17 arrests in the last 6 hours," she said. "More are coming. The public pressure is forcing people to cooperate. You two started something that cannot be stopped now." Marlowe exhaled. "Are we still in danger?" Cross paused. "Yes. Not everyone has been arrested yet. There are still people out there who want this buried. But we are watching you. And the more public this gets, the harder it is for them to act without being noticed." "How long do we have to stay here?" Werner asked. Cross's voice softened. "A few weeks, maybe longer. We will keep you updated, but I want you both to know something. What you did, it matters. You gave a voice to decades of victims. You proved that no one is above the law. Thank you." After she hung up, Marlowe and Werner sat in silence. Outside, children played in the street. A neighbor mowed their lawn. Life continued as if the world had not just been turned upside down. Werner spoke first. "Do you think we will ever be able to go back?" Marlowe looked at her. "To the island?" She nodded. "I know it sounds crazy, but I felt something there, like we belonged." Marlowe smiled. "Maybe we can. Once this is over, once it is safe, we could fix it up, turn it into something good." Werner's eyes brightened. "Like a retreat, a place for people who need to get away, to heal." Marlowe nodded. "Yeah, a place that honors what Thorne tried to do. We could call it the Second Chance Estate." Werner laughed, and for the first time in days it was genuine. "I like that." Over the next 2 weeks, the arrests continued. Senators resigned, judges were disbarred, corporate executives were led out of boardrooms in handcuffs. The story dominated every news cycle. And through it all, Marlowe and Werner stayed hidden, watching from their safe house as the world they had shaken slowly began to rebuild itself. Whitley visited them once, bringing flowers and updates. "You two are legends now," she said. "People are calling you the bravest seniors in America." Werner blushed. "We were just scared." Whitley shook her head. "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. You two could have taken the money Voss offered and walked away. But you did not. That is courage." Marlowe looked at her. "What about you? You are the one who told the story." Whitley smiled. "I just wrote the words. You two lived them." Before she left, Whitley handed them a package. "What is this?" Werner asked. "Something I thought you should have." Werner opened it. Inside was a framed photograph of the island, taken from the water at sunrise. The mansion stood on the hill, weathered and beautiful, the ocean stretching endlessly behind it. Underneath, a small plaque read, "Where Courage Lived." Werner's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Whitley squeezed her hand. "Thank you, both of you." 3 weeks after the story broke, Agent Cross called again. "We have arrested everyone on the list," she said. "The remaining players have either fled the country or are cooperating with prosecutors. You are safe now." Marlowe felt the weight lift from his chest. "We can go home." Cross hesitated. "You can go anywhere you want, but I should warn you the island is going to be a media circus for a while. Everyone wants to see where it happened." Marlowe looked at Werner. She nodded. "We can handle it," Marlowe said. "That place is ours, and we are not running anymore." When they finally returned to the island, it was not the same. News vans lined the mainland shore. Helicopters circled overhead. But when they stepped off the ferry onto the stone pier, something shifted. The island still felt like theirs. Agent Cross had assigned 2 guards to stay with them for the first few weeks, but Marlowe and Werner did not feel like prisoners. They felt like caretakers. They began the work of restoring the mansion, not as a shrine to Cornelius Thorne, but as a testament to what ordinary people could do when they refused to be silenced. Local contractors volunteered their time. Donations poured in from people inspired by their story. Within months, the mansion began to transform, and in the vault below, now empty of gold and currency, but filled with archived documents preserved for history, A small museum was built, a place where visitors could see the evidence, learn the story, and remember that justice, no matter how delayed, is always worth fighting for. Marlowe and Verna Henderson had bought an island estate for $12,000. What they found beneath it changed the world. But what they built above it, that was their true legacy. The restoration of the mansion took months, but it was not just bricks and mortar that needed rebuilding. Marlowe and Verna had to rebuild their sense of safety, their trust in the world around them. Every car that slowed near the ferry dock made Marlowe tense. Every unknown phone call made Verna's hands shake. The arrests had been made, but the shadow of what they had uncovered still hung over them like storm clouds that refused to break. By late autumn, 6 months after they had first discovered the vault, the island had transformed. The mansion gleamed with fresh paint. The gardens, cleared and replanted by volunteers, bloomed with late-season roses and chrysanthemums. The broken windows had been replaced. The roof no longer leaked. But despite the beauty, there was an undercurrent of unease that Marlowe could not shake. He stood on the veranda one morning, coffee steaming in his hands, watching the mainland in the distance. Verna joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cool breeze. "You are worried," she said. It was not a question. Marlowe nodded. "I keep thinking about all those people we exposed, the ones who got arrested, their families, their associates. They lost everything because of us." Verna touched his arm gently. "They lost everything because of their own choices. We just brought the truth to light." "I know," he said, "but that does not mean they see it that way." Before Verna could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression tightened. "It is Jessica, their eldest daughter." Verna answered, putting it on speaker. "Mum!" Jessica's voice was strained. "Have you seen the news this morning?" "What news?" Marlowe asked, already moving toward the door. Jessica's breath was shaky. "Someone leaked your home address. The mainland house, the one you still technically own. There are protesters outside. They are saying you stole money that should have been returned to victims, that you are profiting from corruption." Marlowe and Verna exchanged a glance. Jessica continued, her voice rising. "And Mom, Dad, it is not just protesters. There are people with signs calling you traitors, saying you ruined families. You need to be careful." Verna's face had gone pale. "We did not steal anything. We are not keeping the money." "We know, Mom," Jessica said, softer now. "But not everyone sees it that way. Please, just stay safe." After they hung up, Marlowe turned on the small television they had set up in the parlor. The news was already covering it. Footage of their old mobile home park, now surrounded by angry people holding signs. "Give back the money." "Henderson profiteers." "Justice for the accused families." The reporter's voice was measured but pointed. The Hendersons, who discovered the controversial Thorn Vault, have faced criticism in recent weeks as families of the accused claim they should not benefit from evidence obtained through what some are calling illegal search and seizure. Marlowe shut off the television. "This is insane. We have not touched a penny of that money." Verna sat down heavily. "But people do not know that. All they see is that we found $680 million and now we are living on a private island." Marlowe ran his hands through his thinning hair. "We need to make a statement, a public one. We need to tell people what we are really doing with the money." That afternoon, Marlowe called Whitley Dane. She answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when you would call," she said. "You saw the news?" Marlowe asked. "Everyone saw the news," Whitley replied. "And for what it is worth, I think it is garbage. You two are being scapegoated by people who do not want to face the real criminals." "We need to set the record straight," Marlowe said. "Can you help us?" Whitley did not hesitate. "Absolutely. But we need to do this right. A press conference, full transparency, show people exactly what you are planning to do with the estate and the money." "When?" Marlowe asked. As soon as possible, Whitley said. The longer this narrative sits, the harder it is to change. How about 3 days from now? Marlowe looked at Verna. She nodded. 3 days, he confirmed. Whitley's voice was firm. I will set it up. And Marlowe, do not let the noise get to you. You two did the right thing. The hard part is living with the consequences. After the call ended, Marlowe and Verna sat together in the quiet of the library. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. We knew this would not be easy, Verna said softly. Marlowe took her hand. I just did not expect people to hate us for it. She squeezed his fingers. They do not hate us. They are scared, angry, looking for someone to blame. We are just the easiest target. Marlowe leaned his head back against the chair. So what do we do? We tell the truth, Verna said, and we do not apologize for it. The press conference was held on the island itself. Whitley arranged for a small group of journalists carefully vetted to be ferried over. Agent Helena Cross was there as well, standing off to the side, her presence a reminder that the federal investigation was ongoing. Marlowe and Verna stood on the front steps of the mansion, microphones set up in front of them, cameras pointed like accusations. Marlowe wore the same flannel shirt he had worn the day they first arrived. Verna wore a simple dress, her silver hair pulled back. They looked exactly like what they were, two ordinary people who had stumbled into something extraordinary. Marlowe spoke first, his voice steady despite the nerves churning in his stomach. My name is Marlowe Henderson. This is my wife, Verna. 6 months ago, we bought this property for $12,000. We were looking for a quiet place to retire. What we found instead was a vault containing evidence of crimes that had been hidden for decades. He paused, looking out at the journalists. We did not ask for this. We did not want to be part of a scandal or a media circus. But when we realized what we had, we knew we could not walk away. Some people have accused us of profiting from this discovery. I want to be very clear. We have not taken a single dollar from that vault. Not one. Verna stepped forward. Every asset we found, every piece of evidence, has been turned over to federal authorities. The gold, the currency, the artwork, it is all being held as evidence or will be liquidated to compensate victims of the crimes Cornelius Thorne documented. Marlowe continued. But we did keep this property, and we have a plan for it. We are turning this estate into a center for truth and accountability, a place where whistleblowers can find support, where victims of corruption can find resources, and where people can learn about the importance of standing up to power. We are calling it the Second Chance Foundation. Verna's voice was softer, but no less firm. We are doing this because we believe that even at 73 and 71 years old, we can still make a difference. We do not have political power, we do not have wealth, but we have this place, and we have a story, and we are going to use both to help others. The questions came fast and furious. How will you fund the foundation? What about the families of the accused? Are you working with the government? Marlowe and Verna answered each one with patience and honesty. Whitley stood in the back, filming everything, her expression proud. When it was over, one of the journalists approached them privately. Do you really think this will work? He asked. Do you think people will forgive you? Marlowe met his eyes. We are not asking for forgiveness. We are asking for people to see the truth. If they choose not to, that is their choice. But we are not backing down. The press conference helped, but it did not silence everyone. Online, the comments were brutal. Some praised them. Others called them opportunists, frauds, pawns of the government. Marlowe and Verna tried not to read them, but it was impossible to ignore completely. Their children called frequently now. Jessica, their eldest, had become their fiercest defender, arguing with strangers online and sending encouraging messages daily. Their son, Garrett, 45 and a high school teacher, flew out to visit. He stood in the mansion's foyer looking around with a mixture of awe and concern. This place is incredible, he said, "But Dad, Mum, are you sure you are safe here?" Marlowe nodded. "We have security. Federal agents check in regularly. And most importantly, we have each other." Garrett looked at his father, really looked at him, and saw something he had not seen in years: purpose. "You are happy," he said, surprised. Marlowe smiled. "I am terrified half the time, but yeah, I am happy. We are doing something that matters." Garrett hugged him. "Then I am proud of you, both of you." That night, after Garrett left, Marlowe and Verna walked the perimeter of the property. The island was quiet except for the sound of waves and the distant call of night birds. The moon was full, casting silver light across the stone paths. "Do you ever regret it?" Verna asked suddenly. "Buying this place?" Marlowe thought for a moment. "No, not for a second. Even with everything we have been through. Especially because of everything we have been through," he said. "We could have spent the rest of our lives invisible, scraping by, waiting to die. Instead, we are building something. We matter." Verna stopped walking and turned to face him. The moonlight caught the tears in her eyes. "I love you, Marlowe Henderson." He pulled her close. "I love you too." But not everyone had moved on. 3 weeks after the press conference, Marlowe received a phone call from an unknown number. He almost did not answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Henderson," a voice said. Smooth, cold, unfamiliar. "You made a mistake." Marlowe's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who gave you a chance to walk away," the voice continued. "You should have taken it." "Grayson Voss," Marlowe said, recognizing the tone. "The man who had first threatened them months ago. You are supposed to be in custody." There was a low chuckle. "I have friends, Mr. Henderson, and they are very unhappy with what you have done." The call ended. Marlowe stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear. Verna appeared in the doorway. "Who was that?" Marlowe lowered the phone. "Trouble." He immediately called Agent Cross. She listened to his description of the call, her silence heavy. "Voss was released on bail 2 weeks ago," she said finally. "We have been monitoring him, but he has been careful. Has he made any direct threats?" Marlowe replayed the conversation in his head. Not directly, but the implication was clear. Cross's voice was tense. "I am sending a team to the island tonight. You two are not staying there alone anymore." That evening, 4 federal agents arrived. They set up a command post in one of the mansion's unused wings. Cameras were installed around the property, motion sensors placed along the pathways. Marlowe and Verna tried to go about their routines, but the presence of armed guards was a constant reminder of how exposed they really were. 2 nights later, the power went out, not just in the mansion, but across the entire island. The generators kicked in, but the exterior lights stayed dark. Marlowe was in the library when it happened. He heard the agents moving quickly through the halls, radios crackling. Verna found him, her face pale in the glow of the emergency lights. "What is happening?" Before he could answer, one of the agents appeared. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I need you to come with me. Now." They were led down to the vault, the heavy steel door sealed behind them. The agent, a young woman named Torres, checked her weapon. "We have movement on the north shore, multiple heat signatures approaching by boat." "Are we under attack?" Verna whispered. Torres met her eyes. "We are about to find out. What happens next will turn this quiet sanctuary into a war zone, reveal just how far powerful men will go to protect their secrets, and remind us why sometimes standing your ground is the only option left. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you are enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more." They sat in the vault for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The air was cold and still. Marlowe held Verna's hand, both of them listening to the muffled sounds from above. Footsteps, shouts, the distant crack of something that might have been gunfire. Torres stood by the door, her radio pressed to her ear, her expression unreadable. Marlowe finally broke the silence. How many are up there? Torres glanced at him. Our team is 4. The intruders, at least 6, maybe more. Werner's grip tightened on Marlowe's hand. What do they want? Torres hesitated. You, or more specifically, what you know. Marlowe frowned. But we already gave everything to the FBI. Everything that was here, Torres said. But there are people who think you kept copies, insurance, leverage, and they want to make sure you cannot use it. Werner's voice was barely audible. And if they get to us? Torres's jaw tightened. They will not. Suddenly, her radio crackled. Torres, this is Captain Reeves. We have them contained on the east lawn, but they are armed and dug in. Requesting backup. Torres responded quickly. Backup is en route. Enter 10 minutes. Hold position. Another voice cut through the static. They are asking to negotiate. Marlowe stood up. Negotiate for what? Torres held up a hand. Stand by, Reeves. She turned to Marlowe. They want to talk to you. Absolutely not, Werner said immediately. Torres looked between them. It might be a stalling tactic, or it might be a way to end this without more bloodshed. Marlowe met Werner's eyes. He could see the fear there, but also the resolve. We did not come this far to hide, he said softly. Werner closed her eyes, then nodded. But I am going with you. Torres shook her head. That is not protocol. Marlowe's voice was firm. Then change the protocol. We are a team. We do this together. Torres hesitated, then spoke into her radio. Reeves, the Hendersons are willing to talk, but they stay behind our line. Set up a perimeter. Copy that. They emerged from the vault into chaos. The mansion was dark except for flashlights and the eerie glow of emergency lights. Agents moved through the halls with practiced efficiency, weapons drawn. Outside, floodlights had been set up on the lawn. In their harsh glare, Marlowe could see 6 men kneeling on the ground, hands zip-tied behind their backs. Federal agents stood guard around them. But at the edge of the light, near the tree line, 3 more figures stood in the shadows. One stepped forward. Marlowe recognized him immediately. Grayson Voss. He was dressed in dark clothing, his face calm despite the situation. When he saw Marlowe and Werner, he smiled. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson," he called out. "I told you we would meet again." Captain Reeves, a solid man in his 50s with grey stubble, positioned himself between Voss and the couple. "This is over, Voss. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now." Voss ignored him, his eyes locked on Marlowe. "I came here to offer you one last deal." Marlowe found his voice. "We are not interested in deals." Voss continued as if he had not spoken. "The people I represent, they are willing to let this go. All of it. You keep your little island, your little foundation, your little legacy. You just need to do one thing." "What?" Werner asked, her voice stronger than Marlowe expected. "Admit that some of the documents you found were forged," Voss said. "Just a few key pieces of evidence, enough to create reasonable doubt in a handful of cases." Marlowe felt anger surge through him. "You want us to lie?" Voss shrugged. "I want you to be smart. The alternative is that this does not end tonight. You will spend the rest of your lives looking over your shoulders. Your children, your grandchildren, they will never be safe." Werner stepped forward, and Marlowe tried to hold her back, but she pulled free. "You listen to me," she said, her voice carrying across the lawn. "We are not lying for you. We are not protecting criminals, and we are not afraid of you anymore." Voss's smile faded. "That is unfortunate." He raised his hand. Before anyone could react, gunfire erupted from the tree line. Agents dove for cover. Marlowe grabbed Werner and pulled her down as bullets tore through the air above them. Torres threw herself over them, shielding them with her body. "Return fire!" Reeves shouted. The night exploded with sound. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. Marlowe pressed Werner's face into his chest, his body curled around hers. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Torres rolled off them. "Stay down," she commanded, then moved toward the tree line with her weapon raised. Marlowe lifted his head cautiously. Voss was on the ground, blood spreading across his chest. The other two figures had vanished into the forest. Agents were pursuing, their flashlights bobbing between the trees. Reeves appeared above them, offering his hand. "Are you hurt?" Marlowe shook his head, helping Verna to her feet. She was shaking but uninjured. "We are okay," he managed. Reeves looked grim. "This is going to get worse before it gets better. More agents are coming. You two need to leave the island." "No," Marlowe said. Reeves stared at him. "Excuse me?" "We are not leaving," Verna said, finding her voice. "This is our home. We will not be chased away." Reeves looked like he wanted to argue, but something in their expressions stopped him. "Then you are going to need more protection." By dawn, the island looked like a military base. Federal agents patrolled the grounds. Helicopters circled overhead. The 6 men who had been captured were being questioned. Voss was in surgery, critical but alive. Marlowe and Verna sat in the library, wrapped in blankets despite the morning warmth, both of them in shock. Agent Cross arrived by helicopter just after sunrise. She walked into the library, her face drawn. "I am so sorry," she said. "We should have had more security here." Marlowe shook his head. "You could not have known they would be this desperate." Cross sat down across from them. "Grayson Voss is talking. He is trying to cut a deal, naming names, giving up his employers. It turns out there is a consortium of individuals, former business partners of the people you exposed, who have been funding efforts to discredit the evidence and intimidate you." "How many?" Verna asked. Cross hesitated. "At least 20. Some very powerful people." Marlowe felt exhaustion wash over him. "When does this end?" "When we arrest all of them," Cross said, "and when the trials are over, which could take years." Verna looked at Marlowe. "We cannot live like this for years." Marlowe knew she was right. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then he had an idea. "What if we do not wait for the trials?" Cross frowned. "What do you mean?" Marlowe leaned forward. "We have been playing defense this whole time, waiting for them to come after us. What if we go on offense?" Verna caught on. "We release everything ourselves." Cross shook her head. "The evidence is sealed for the trials. Releasing it could compromise the cases." Marlowe met her eyes. "Then we do not release the evidence. We release our story. Every threat, every attack, every attempt to silence us. We make it so public, so transparent, that anyone who comes after us does it in broad daylight." Cross considered this. "You want to shine a spotlight so bright they cannot hide in the shadows anymore." "Exactly," Verna said. "Whitley can help us. We do interviews, documentaries, social media. We turn this place into a symbol." Cross was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "It is risky, but it might work. The more public you are, the more dangerous it becomes to target you." Marlowe squeezed Verna's hand. "Then that is what we do." The campaign began immediately. Whitley returned to the island with a film crew. Over the next 2 weeks, they documented everything: the mansion, the vault, the restoration work, and most importantly, Marlowe and Verna's story. Interviews were posted online, going viral within hours. News outlets picked them up. Talk shows requested appearances. Social media exploded with support. The hashtag Second Chance Foundation trended for 3 days straight. Donations poured in from around the world. Small amounts, $5, $20, but thousands of them. People who believed in what Marlowe and Verna were trying to do. People who wanted to be part of something good. Their children joined them on the island. Jessica helped manage the social media accounts. Garrett organized volunteer work parties to help with the restoration. Their youngest, Maya, 38 and a lawyer, offered legal advice on setting up the foundation properly. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The protesters who had gathered at their old mobile home park dispersed. Supportive rallies sprang up instead. People wearing Second Chance Foundation t-shirts, signs that read "Courage has no age." One afternoon, Marlowe stood on the veranda watching a group of volunteers plant trees along the property's edge. Verna joined him, a tablet in her hands. "You need to see this," she said. She showed him a video. It had been posted by a young woman, maybe 25, sitting in what looked like a college dorm room. "My name is Alexis," she said to the camera. 3 years ago, my father was arrested for fraud. He lost everything. Our family lost everything. I hated him for it. But after seeing what Mr. and Mrs. Henderson went through, I finally read the evidence against my dad. And I realized he was guilty. He did those things, and I needed to face that. So I want to say thank you to the Hendersons. You did not just expose crimes. You helped people like me stop making excuses and start demanding better." Marlowe's eyes filled with tears. "We are reaching people," Verna said softly. "Real people." He nodded, unable to speak. That evening, Agent Cross called with news. "We have arrested 18 members of the consortium that funded the attack on your island. The others have fled or are in negotiation for immunity. Voss is cooperating fully." Marlowe felt relief wash over him. "So it is over?" Cross hesitated. "The immediate threat, yes, but there will always be people who resent what you did. You will need to be careful. But you are not in danger the way you were." Marlowe looked at Verna. She smiled. "We will take it." By winter, the Second Chance Foundation was officially operational. The mansion had been converted into a retreat and education center. The first floor housed a museum documenting Cornelius Thorne's evidence and the investigation that followed. The second floor had meeting rooms for whistleblower support groups and victim advocacy organizations. The third floor, the former bedrooms, had been transformed into short-term housing for people who needed a safe place to stay while testifying in corruption cases or rebuilding their lives after exposing wrongdoing. Marlowe and Verna moved into a small cottage on the property, built by volunteers using sustainable materials donated by local companies. It was simple, cozy, and theirs. One crisp December morning, they stood together on the pier, watching the ferry arrive with the first official group of guests. 12 whistleblowers from across the country, each one facing retaliation for speaking truth to power. Verna squeezed Marlowe's hand. "We really did it." Marlowe smiled. "Yeah, we did." The guests disembarked, carrying bags and cautious hope. Marlowe and Verna greeted each one personally, shaking hands, offering warm welcomes. One man, grey-haired and tired-looking, stopped in front of them. "I read about what you two went through," he said, "and it gave me the courage to come forward about what I saw at my company. They fired me. My friends stopped talking to me, but I knew I did the right thing because people like you showed me it was possible." Marlowe felt emotions swell in his chest. "You are the brave one," he said. "We are just providing a place to rest." The man smiled. "Sometimes that is all anyone needs." As the group walked up the path toward the mansion, Verna leaned against Marlowe. "We are 73 and 71 years old," she said, "and we are just getting started." Marlowe kissed the top of her head. "Just getting started." But as they turned to follow the guests, Marlowe noticed something. A boat in the distance, moving slowly along the horizon. Not the ferry. Something smaller, faster. Watching. He said nothing to Verna, but his hand found his phone. He texted Agent Cross. "Unknown boat near the island." Cross's response came immediately. "We see it, already dispatching Coast Guard. Stay alert." Marlowe slipped the phone back in his pocket. The fight was not over. It might never be truly over. But as he watched the guests disappear into the mansion, heard their voices echoing with tentative laughter, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. They would keep fighting, because some battles are worth every scar. The unknown boat turned out to be a false alarm, just a fishing vessel that had drifted off course. But the incident reminded Marlowe and Verna of a truth they could not ignore. Their lives would never be completely ordinary again. They had become symbols, and symbols are never truly safe. The Coast Guard increased their patrols around the island. Agent Cross assigned a permanent security detail, 2 agents who rotated shifts, living in a small guardhouse built near the pier. Marlowe hated the constant surveillance at first, the reminder that danger still lurked somewhere in the shadows. But over time, he grew accustomed to it, even grateful. The winter months were quieter than they expected. The Foundation hosted 3 more groups of whistleblowers, each stay lasting 2 weeks. The guests arrived broken, scared, isolated by their choices to speak truth. They left with something Marlowe and Werner had not anticipated: community. People who had exposed corruption in hospitals connected with those who had revealed fraud in corporations. A former police officer who had testified against his department found solidarity with a teacher who had reported abuse in her school. Bonds formed in the mansion's warm rooms, over shared meals and late-night conversations. These were people who had sacrificed everything for integrity, and now they had found others who understood. Werner organized support groups, bringing in therapists and legal advisors. Marlowe led workshops on practical survival skills, everything from budgeting after losing a job to dealing with media attention. They were not experts, but they had lived through it. That made them credible in ways no professional could match. One evening in January, after the last group had departed, Marlowe and Werner sat in their cottage. Snow had begun to fall, rare for the Carolina coast, dusting the island in white. Werner was reading through thank-you letters the guests had left behind. Marlowe was attempting to fix a drawer that had come off its track. "Listen to this one," Werner said softly. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, when I arrived at your island, I had not slept more than 3 hours a night in 6 months. I had lost my career, my marriage, and my faith in humanity. But during my 2 weeks here, something shifted. I remembered why I came forward in the first place. Not because I wanted to be a hero, but because staying silent would have made me complicit. You two reminded me that doing the right thing is never a mistake, even when it costs everything. Thank you for building a place where the broken can become whole again." Werner's voice cracked on the last words. Marlowe set down his tools and moved to sit beside her. "We are doing something that matters," he said. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. It is just overwhelming sometimes. How many lives we are touching." Marlowe took the letters from her hands and set them aside. Then he pulled her close. "We are not doing this alone anymore. We have help, we have support, and we have each other." Werner smiled against his shoulder. "When did you become so wise?" Marlowe chuckled. "About 6 months ago when I bought an island for $12,000. She laughed, and the sound filled the small cottage with warmth. By spring, the Second Chance Foundation had expanded beyond what they had imagined. The story had reached international audiences. Donations were substantial enough to hire a small staff, a program director, 2 counselors, an administrative assistant, and a full-time chef to prepare meals for guests. Whitley Dane continued to document their progress, releasing periodic updates that kept the story alive in the public consciousness. The foundation began receiving requests from organizations around the world, universities wanting to study their model, non-profits seeking partnerships, even governments asking for advice on protecting whistleblowers. Marlowe and Werner found themselves speaking at conferences via video call, their faces projected on screens in Stockholm, London, Singapore. It was surreal. One afternoon in April, their son Garrett arrived with unexpected news. He walked into the mansion's main hall where Marlowe was reviewing applications from potential guests. "Dad," Garrett said, slightly out of breath, "I need to talk to you and Mom." They gathered in what had become the family meeting room, a small library on the 2nd floor. Werner poured tea while Garrett paced. "What is wrong?" Werner asked. Garrett stopped pacing. "Nothing is wrong. Actually, something is very right." He pulled out his phone and showed them an email. "It is from the MacArthur Foundation. They want to give you two a genius grant. Marlowe frowned. A what? Garrett laughed. It is one of the most prestigious awards in the country. $625,000, no strings attached, for people who show exceptional creativity and dedication to their work. Verna set down her teacup carefully. That is not possible. We are not geniuses. We are just two people trying to help. Garrett shook his head. That is exactly why you are getting it. You took an impossible situation and turned it into something that is changing lives. The foundation is being studied by policymakers. You have created a replicable model for supporting whistleblowers. You have proven that ordinary people can stand up to extraordinary power. Marlowe and Verna looked at each other. $625,000, Marlowe repeated. That could fund the foundation for years. Garrett smiled. That is what they are hoping you will do with it. The award ceremony was held in Chicago in June. Marlowe wore a suit he had bought at a discount store. Verna wore a simple blue dress that Jessica had helped her pick out. They felt out of place among the other recipients. Scientists, artists, activists, decades younger and infinitely more polished. But when they were called to the stage, something unexpected happened. The audience, over 1,000 people, rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. Marlowe and Verna stood at the podium, overwhelmed. Marlowe leaned toward the microphone. We are not sure why we are here, he said honestly. We did not set out to change the world. We just bought a house and found something we could not ignore. Laughter rippled through the audience. Verna stepped closer. But if our story has taught us anything, it is that age does not determine worth. Neither does wealth or status or power. What matters is what you do when faced with a choice between what is easy and what is right. More applause. Marlowe continued. We are using this grant to expand the Second Chance Foundation. We want to build more retreat centers, create scholarship programs for the children of whistleblowers, and establish a legal defense fund for people who cannot afford to fight back, because everyone deserves a second chance. The applause continued long after they left the stage. Backstage, a young woman approached them. She was maybe 30, dressed in a sharp suit, holding a leather portfolio. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, my name is Simone Parks. I am with the Justice Collaborative, a non-profit that works with international whistleblower networks. We have been following your work closely. She handed them a card. We would like to discuss partnering with your foundation to expand your model globally. There are people all over the world who need what you have built. Marlowe took the card, still dazed. Globally? Simone smiled. Your story has resonated far beyond America. Courage is universal. We will be in touch. By autumn, the Second Chance Foundation had satellite programs operating in 4 countries. The original island remained the headquarters, but smaller retreat centers had been established in Scotland, New Zealand, Costa Rica, and South Africa. Each one was run by local advocates who had been trained by Marlowe and Verna's team. The foundation was no longer just theirs. It had become a movement. But success brought scrutiny. In October, a conservative news network ran a segment questioning the foundation's finances. They implied that Marlowe and Verna were living lavishly off donations, that the whistleblowers who stayed at the retreat were being coached to lie about their employers, that the whole operation was a front for political activism. The segment was filled with innuendo and lacked evidence, but it spread quickly online. Marlowe watched it in their cottage, his jaw tight. This is garbage, he muttered. Verna sat beside him, equally angry but calmer. It was bound to happen. We have been in the spotlight for almost 2 years. Someone was going to try to tear us down. Their lawyer, Maya, their youngest daughter, called within an hour. Did you see it? Marlowe confirmed. What do we do? Sue? Maya's voice was firm. No. Suing gives them legitimacy. What we do is release a full financial audit. Every dollar that comes in, every dollar that goes out. Complete transparency. We let the facts speak for themselves. Within 24 hours, The foundation's financial records were posted online, independently audited by a major accounting firm. The numbers were clear. Marlowe and Werner took no salary. They lived in a modest cottage on the property. 92 cents of every dollar donated went directly to programs. The remaining 8 cents covered administrative costs, all within industry standards. The news network issued no retraction, but the story died. The foundation's credibility, if anything, was strengthened. One of the guests staying at the retreat that month, a woman named Claudia who had exposed safety violations at a pharmaceutical company, approached Werner after the audit was released. "I saw what they tried to do to you," Claudia said, "and I saw how you responded. With facts, with transparency, with dignity. That is what I need to learn. How to fight back without becoming like them." Werner took her hand. "You already know how. You just needed to see that it is possible." Claudia's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Not just for this place. For showing me that speaking truth does not have to destroy you. It can make you stronger." By the time their second anniversary on the island arrived, Marlowe and Werner had become something they never expected. Icons. Magazines featured them. Documentary crews requested access. A Broadway playwright wanted to adapt their story. It was overwhelming and humbling and exhausting. One December evening, they walked down to the pier alone. The security guards remained at a respectful distance. The air was cold, the water black and restless, stars scattered across the sky like thrown diamonds. Werner leaned against the railing. "Do you ever miss being invisible?" Marlowe considered the question. "Sometimes. It was simpler when nobody knew our names." "But?" Werner prompted. "But I would not trade this for anything," he said. "We have spent our whole lives being told we did not matter, that our best years were behind us, and then we stumbled into something that proved all of that wrong." Werner turned to face him. "We are 75 and 73 now. How much longer can we keep this up?" Marlowe smiled. "As long as we are needed. And when we are not." He took both her hands. "Then we sit on this pier and watch the sunset, and know we did everything we could." Tears slipped down Werner's cheeks. "I love you." "I love you too," Marlowe whispered. Behind them, the mansion glowed with warm light. Inside, a new group of guests were gathering for dinner, their voices carrying across the cold air. People who had lost everything but found refuge here. People who were learning that courage has no expiration date. Marlowe and Werner stood together in the darkness, holding hands, listening to the sound of lives being rebuilt. What happens next will show just how far a second chance can reach, reveal the true measure of a life well lived, and remind us why the smallest acts of courage can echo through generations. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you are enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. The following spring brought unexpected visitors. A delegation from the United Nations arrived on the island, led by a woman named Dr. Amara Okafor, the Special Rapporteur on the Protection of Whistleblowers. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself with the authority of someone used to addressing world leaders. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson," she said, shaking their hands warmly. "Your foundation has become a case study in international human rights circles. We would like to discuss formalizing your model into a UN-endorsed framework for whistleblower protection globally." Marlowe and Werner sat with her in the mansion's conference room, surrounded by their small staff and Agent Cross, who remained their liaison with federal authorities. Dr. Okafor spread documents across the table. "What you have built here is unique," she explained. "Most whistleblower protection focuses on legal frameworks, laws, and regulations. But you have addressed the human element, the psychological trauma, the social isolation, the economic devastation. You have created a holistic model of support." Werner spoke carefully. "We are not policy experts. We just did what we thought was right." Dr. Okafor smiled. That is precisely why it works. You approach this with empathy rather than bureaucracy. Our proposal is to help you scale this model while maintaining its integrity. We can provide funding, diplomatic protection, and access to networks in countries where whistleblowers face even greater dangers than here in America. Marlowe felt the weight of what she was suggesting. You want us to help people internationally? Not just people fleeing corruption, Dr. Okafor said, but people exposing human rights abuses, environmental crimes, war crimes, the kind of whistleblowers who cannot safely remain in their own countries. They need places like this. Sanctuaries. Over the next several months, the partnership took shape. The Second Chance Foundation became the cornerstone of a new international initiative, the Global Courage Network. Additional retreat centers were established in neutral countries with strong human rights protections. Funding came from multiple sources: the UN, private foundations, individual donors, even some governments seeking to demonstrate their commitment to transparency. Marlowe and Werner found themselves in the strange position of being administrators of something much larger than they had imagined. But they refused to lose touch with the core mission. They still greeted every guest personally, still ate meals with them, still listened to their stories late into the night. One evening in July, a guest arrived who would change everything again. His name was Dmitry, a Russian scientist who had exposed illegal weapons testing. He arrived with nothing but a small backpack and eyes that had seen too much. Marlowe and Werner welcomed him as they did everyone, with warmth and no judgment. Over the following days, Dmitry slowly opened up. He had lost his family, his career, his country. He had been smuggled out through a network of activists, narrowly escaping assassination. And now he was here, on an island off the Carolina coast, trying to understand how to keep living. One night, Dmitry found Marlowe sitting alone on the veranda. "May I join you?" Dmitry asked in careful English. Marlowe gestured to the empty chair. "Of course." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the moon reflect on the water. Then Dmitry spoke. "In my country we have a saying, the tallest nail gets hammered down. It means that standing out, speaking up, these are dangerous things." Marlowe nodded. "We have a similar expression here. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. But I think we mean the opposite, that speaking up gets you what you need." Dmitry smiled sadly. "Perhaps both are true. You speak up and you get what you need, but you also get hammered down." Marlowe considered this. "So why do it? Why speak up if you know what is coming?" Dmitry looked at him, and Marlowe saw something profound in his eyes. Because some truths are more important than safety. Because silence is a different kind of death. Marlowe felt those words settle deep in his chest. Yes, that is exactly it. Dmitry continued, "When I arrived here, I believed my life was over. Everything I had worked for, destroyed. But these past weeks, watching you and Mrs. Henderson, seeing how you have turned your own suffering into something that helps others, I realized something. My life is not over. It is transformed." Marlowe did not trust himself to speak. He simply reached over and squeezed Dmitry's shoulder. The next morning, Dmitry asked if he could volunteer at the foundation. "I am a scientist," he said, "but I can cook, clean, help with maintenance. I want to give back." Within a month, Dmitry had become essential to the foundation's operations. He organized the library, helped guests navigate technology, and shared his own story with newcomers who needed to hear that survival was possible. He was the first guest to transition from resident to staff member, but he would not be the last. The foundation had discovered something powerful. The people they helped often became the best helpers. By the 3rd anniversary of their arrival on the island, the transformation was complete. The mansion that had once been a crumbling monument to secrets was now a thriving center of hope. On any given week, 20 to 30 people called it home. Some guests, some staff, all connected by the shared experience of choosing truth over comfort. Marlowe and Verna's children had become deeply involved. Jessica managed the foundation's communications, her background in marketing proving invaluable. Garrett developed the educational programs, bringing in speakers and creating curricula. Maya handled the legal complexities of operating internationally. Even their grandchildren volunteered during summer breaks, learning that service was a family value. One September afternoon, Agent Helena Cross visited the island one final time. She found Marlowe and Verna in the garden they had planted together, now blooming with late summer flowers. "I am retiring," Cross said, sitting on a stone bench. "After 30 years with the Bureau, it is time." Marlowe looked up from the tomato plants he was staking. "You are not going to miss the excitement?" Cross laughed. "I have had enough excitement. But I wanted to thank you both before I go." "For what?" Verna asked, genuinely puzzled. "For reminding me why I took this job in the first place," Cross said. "I spent decades investigating crimes, building cases, putting bad people in prison. But somewhere along the way, I forgot about the victims, the people hurt by corruption, the ones who spoke up and paid the price. You two refocused my attention on what really matters." Marlowe brushed dirt from his hands. "You protected us. We owe you our lives." Cross shook her head. "You protected yourselves. I just made sure you had the space to do it." She stood to leave, then paused. "You know what the most remarkable thing about all of this is?" Verna waited. "You were 73 and 71 when you started. Most people your age are winding down, taking it easy. You two ignited a global movement." Marlowe smiled. "Maybe that is the secret. When you have less time left, you stop wasting it." Cross left them with a final handshake and a promise to visit again. As her boat disappeared toward the mainland, Marlowe turned to Verna. 3 years. It feels like a lifetime." "It has been," Verna said. "Just not our old one." That winter, the Foundation received news that would cement its legacy. The International Criminal Court announced that testimony and evidence provided by whistleblowers who had been through the Second Chance Foundation's programs had led to the successful prosecution of 17 individuals for crimes against humanity, corruption, and human rights abuses. The cases spanned multiple continents and involved everything from illegal arms sales to environmental destruction to election fraud. During a virtual ceremony, the chief prosecutor addressed Marlowe and Verna directly. "Your foundation has become an essential partner in the pursuit of justice. By providing sanctuary and support to those brave enough to speak truth, you have enabled prosecutions that otherwise would have been impossible. We honor your courage and your compassion." The ceremony was broadcast internationally. Messages poured in from around the world. But the most meaningful came from former guests, now living new lives, starting over, rebuilding. One message in particular stood out. It was from Claudia, the woman who had exposed pharmaceutical safety violations. "Dear Marlowe and Verna, I just accepted a position as Director of Safety Compliance at a major hospital. They hired me not in spite of my whistleblowing, but because of it. They said they wanted someone with integrity. I never thought I would work in my field again. You gave me back my future. Thank you." Verna read it aloud to Marlowe, her voice breaking. "We gave her back her future," she repeated. Marlowe pulled her close. "And she gave us ours." By their 4th year on the island, Marlowe was 77 and Verna was 75. Their bodies were slower, their energy diminished, but their purpose burned as bright as ever. They had begun training successors, younger activists and advocates who could carry the foundation forward when they could no longer lead it themselves. Dmitry, the Russian scientist, had become the foundation's deputy director. A former investigative journalist named Keisha, who had exposed government surveillance programs, now ran the international programs. A retired judge who had blown the whistle on courtroom corruption oversaw the legal aid initiatives. The foundation was no longer dependent on Marlowe and Verna. It had become an institution, but they remained its heart. One spring morning, Marlowe woke to find Verna sitting on the edge of their bed, staring out the window. "You okay?" he asked. She turned to him and he saw tears on her cheeks. "I was just thinking about that first day, when we pulled up to the pier and saw this place. We had no idea." Marlowe sat up, taking her hand. "Are you having regrets?" "No," she said quickly. "The opposite. I am overwhelmed by gratitude. We could have lived our last years in that mobile home, invisible and forgotten. Instead, we built something that will outlast us." Marlowe kissed her forehead. "We built it together." Later that day, they took a walk around the island. The paths were well maintained now, lined with solar lights and benches. The gardens flourished. The mansion stood proud and purposeful. Everywhere they looked, they saw the fruit of their labor and the labor of hundreds of others who had joined the cause. They ended up at their favorite spot, the highest point on the island, where they could see the mainland in the distance and the ocean stretching endlessly in every direction. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Verna leaned against Marlowe. "When we are gone, what do you think people will remember about us?" Marlowe thought for a long moment. "I hope they remember that we did not wait for someone else to fix things, that we did not let fear stop us, that we believed ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they are willing to try." Verna smiled. "That is a good legacy." Marlowe wrapped his arm around her. "What about you? What do you want people to remember?" Verna watched the sun touch the horizon. "I want them to remember that it is never too late, that you can be 71 years old and start the most important work of your life. That age is not an ending, it can be a beginning." They stood together in silence as the sun sank lower, the sky darkening from orange to deep purple to the first appearance of stars. Behind them, lights flickered on in the mansion. Voices carried on the evening breeze, laughter and conversation, the sound of people healing. Marlowe and Verna had bought an island estate for $12,000. What they found beneath it could have destroyed them, enriched them, or defined them as victims. Instead, they chose to transform it into something that would change the world. 5 years after they first set foot on the island, the Second Chance Foundation held its largest gathering yet. Whistleblowers from 60 countries converged for a week-long conference. Workshops, healing circles, strategy sessions and celebrations filled every corner of the property. Marlowe and Verna moved through the crowd like beloved grandparents, embraced by people whose lives they had touched directly or indirectly. On the final night, a ceremony was held on the lawn. Hundreds of people gathered as the sun set over the ocean. Dmitri stepped to the microphone, his English now fluent and confident. 5 years ago, I arrived here with nothing. No home, no family, no hope. Marlowe and Verna gave me all three. Not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of kindness. They listened when I spoke. They believed me when I told my story. They reminded me that losing everything for the truth is not losing at all. It is winning. He gestured to the crowd. Everyone here knows this truth. We have all sacrificed. We have all suffered. But we are not victims. We are witnesses. And because of what Marlowe and Verna built, we are survivors. The crowd erupted in applause. Marlowe and Verna were called to the stage. They climbed the steps slowly, holding hands, overwhelmed. Marlowe stepped to the microphone. His voice, though softer with age, carried across the silent crowd. When Verna and I bought this place, we thought we were buying a retirement home. We had no idea we were buying a revolution. Laughter rippled through the audience. Verna took the microphone. We are not special. We are not heroes. We are just two people who refused to look away when we saw something wrong. And what we learned is this: the world does not change because of powerful people making grand decisions. It changes because of ordinary people making brave choices. One person speaking truth, one person offering shelter, one person refusing to give up. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. You are those people. You are the ones who will carry this forward. We started something here, but you will finish it. And long after we are gone, this place will stand as proof that courage is contagious, that justice is possible, and that no one is ever too small, too old, or too ordinary to change the world. The applause was thunderous. People wept openly. Strangers embraced. And Marlowe and Verna stood together, hands clasped, watching their legacy bloom in real time. 6 months later, on a quiet morning in December, Marlowe suffered a heart attack. It was mild, the doctors said, but at 77, every medical event carried weight. He spent a week in the hospital on the mainland, Verna at his bedside every moment. When he finally returned to the island, thinner and moving more carefully, the entire Foundation community gathered to welcome him home. Marlowe stood on the pier, leaning on Verna's arm, and looked at the faces surrounding him. Staff members who had become family, former guests who had become leaders, volunteers who had become friends. "I am not going anywhere yet," he said, his voice raspy but strong. "We still have work to do." But the heart attack changed things. Marlowe and Verna began the formal process of transitioning leadership. Dimitri would become executive director. Keisha would oversee programs. A board of directors was established, composed of former guests and allies. Marlowe and Verna would remain as founders, emeritus, advisors, symbols, but no longer operators. It was time. One evening in their cottage, they sat together reviewing the transition documents. Verna set down her pen. "Are you afraid?" Marlowe looked at her. "Of dying?" "A little. But mostly I am afraid of being forgotten." Verna took his hand. "You will never be forgotten. This place exists. Thousands of people have been helped. That is immortality." Marlowe smiled. "When did you become the wise one?" Verna laughed. "I have always been the wise one. You just were not paying attention." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes after nearly 55 years of marriage. Outside, snow began to fall again, rare and beautiful. Marlowe broke the silence. "If I could go back and change anything, you know what I would change?" Verna waited. "Nothing," he said. "Not a single moment. Not the fear, not the danger, not even the mobile home. Because all of it led here. To this. To a life that mattered." Verna's eyes filled with tears. "Me too." Marlowe lived another 3 years, long enough to see the Foundation establish its 100th retreat center, long enough to welcome his first great-grandchild, long enough to know with absolute certainty that their work would continue. He died peacefully in his sleep on a warm June morning, Verna beside him, the sound of ocean waves drifting through the open window. The memorial service was held on the island. Over 1,000 people attended. Whistleblowers, activists, journalists, politicians, ordinary citizens whose lives had been touched by the story. Dimitri delivered the eulogy, his voice strong and clear. Marlowe Henderson bought an island for $12,000. But what he really bought was a chance to prove that one person can make a difference. That age is not a limitation but an asset, bringing wisdom, patience, and perspective. That the end of one life can be the beginning of another. He paused, looking at Verna in the front row. Marlowe and Verna showed us that heroism is not loud or flashy. It is quiet and persistent. It is showing up every day, even when you are scared. It is choosing truth over comfort, justice over safety, compassion over indifference. Marlowe is gone, but his legacy lives in every person who walks through our doors seeking refuge, in every whistleblower who finds the courage to speak because they know they will not be abandoned, in every child who learns that their voice matters regardless of age or status. Verna stood to speak, her voice steady despite her grief. "Marlowe would want me to tell you something very simple. Do not wait. Do not wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect amount of courage. Life is shorter than we think and more precious than we realize. If you see something that needs fixing, fix it. If you see someone who needs help, help them. If you have a chance to make a difference, take it. Because in the end, the only thing that matters is what we did with the time we had. She looked out at the crowd. Marlowe and I had $12,000 and a crazy idea. Look what it became. Imagine what you could do. Verna lived another 5 years, long enough to see the foundation win the Nobel Peace Prize, long enough to publish a memoir that became an international bestseller, long enough to dance at her granddaughter's wedding. She remained active in the foundation until the very end, greeting guests, sharing her story, reminding people that it is never too late to start over. She died at age 80, surrounded by her children, in the cottage she had shared with Marlowe. Her last words were simple: "We did good." The funeral was smaller, more intimate. The foundation's leadership gathered with family and close friends. Dmitri spoke again, tears streaming down his face. Verna and Marlowe gave me a second chance when no one else would. They gave thousands of people second chances. But what they really gave us was something more profound. They gave us proof that goodness exists, that courage matters, that ordinary people can be extraordinary. Keisha added her own tribute. Verna told me once that she and Marlowe were just two people who refused to be invisible. But they were so much more. They were proof that the world can change, that justice is possible, that love is stronger than fear. They were buried together on the island, on the hill overlooking the ocean. A simple stone marked their graves. Marlowe and Verna Henderson. They refused to look away. 10 years after Marlowe first turned that key in the vault's lock, the Second Chance Foundation had become one of the most respected human rights organizations in the world. 217 retreat centers operated across 93 countries. Over 12,000 whistleblowers had been provided sanctuary, support, and a path forward. The original island remained the headquarters, now expanded with additional buildings, but still centered around the restored mansion. The cottage where Marlowe and Verna lived had been preserved as a museum, their belongings left exactly as they were, a reminder of the humble origins of a global movement. Their children continued the work. Jessica ran the communications arm. Garrett oversaw the educational programs. Maya handled legal advocacy. Dmitri, now in his 50s, remained executive director, stewarding the foundation with the same care Marlowe and Verna had shown him. Every year on the anniversary of the foundation's opening, staff and alumni gathered on the island. They told stories, shared updates, welcomed newcomers, and honored the two people who had started it all. On the 10th anniversary, Dmitri stood before the largest crowd yet. He looked older now, grey threading through his hair, but his eyes still burned with purpose. Marlowe and Verna Henderson taught us that courage has no age limit, he began. They were in their 70s when they chose to fight. They had every reason to walk away, to take the money, to protect themselves, but they did not. They chose justice. They chose compassion. They chose us. He gestured to the crowd. Because of them, we are here. Because of them, corrupt leaders have been held accountable. Because of them, the world knows that whistleblowers are not traitors, they are heroes. And because of them, no one who speaks truth will ever have to face the consequences alone. The crowd stood, applause building like thunder, and on the hill above them, 2 simple stones stood silent, marking the graves of 2 ordinary people who had done something extraordinary. They had refused to be invisible. They had refused to be silent, and they had changed the world. Anyone can change the world if they are willing to stand up when it would be easier to sit down, to speak out when it would be safer to stay quiet, to fight for what is right, even when the cost is everything. As the sun sets over the island where it all began, Marlowe and Verna Henderson's legacy does not rest in the ground. It lives in every person who finds the courage to tell the truth. It lives in every whistleblower who discovers they are not alone. It lives in every ordinary person who realizes they have the power to do extraordinary things. Because for Marlowe and Verna, and for all those who follow in their footsteps, The greatest treasure was never the $680 million buried beneath the floors. It was the courage to use it for something bigger than themselves. And that treasure will never be buried again. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering with us. And do not forget to hit subscribe if you believe courage has no age limit and that it is never too late to make a difference.